number would be given to you on an exam. All right, so let's look at this problem here together, exercise 19.6. Now remember, in the Connect system, there is an exercise called Exam 2 Practice, where you could go over these same problems with different numbers. So here we go, exercise 19.6. Stock options, forfeiture of options. On January 1st, 2016, Adams Menike Corp. granted 60 million incentive stock options to division managers, each permitting holders to purchase one share of the company's $1 par common shares within the next 6 years, but not before December 31st, 2018. The vesting date. The vesting date is very important, so let's just stop right here a second. What we want to do is determine the service period. The options were granted on January 1st, 2016. The vesting date is the date where they could first are eligible to use the options. So that means they have to work 2016, 2017, all the way to the end of 2018. So that's 3 years. So the service period is going to be 3 years. The exercise price is the market price of the shares on the date of grant, which is currently $38 per share. The fair value of the options is estimated by an appropriate option pricing model is $6 per option. Okay, requirement 1 wants to know what's the total compensation cost pertaining to the options on January 1st, which was the date of grant. So we know that there are 60 million options, and the fair value, according to the option pricing model, is $6. So 60 million times 6 is 360 million. So that's your total compensation cost. Now, no company would want to have an expense of $360 million all at once, if not absolutely necessary. And they don't have to, because they will spread it out over the service period. So the service period we established was 3 years, so 360 million divided by 3 years is 120 million. So we look at the next requirement: prepare the appropriate journal entry to record compensation expense on December 31st, 2016. So we see the entry is debit compensation expense and credit paid in capital dash stock options for 120 million. Okay, how did we get to 120 million? Well, the total compensation was 360, and the service period was 3 years. 360 divided by 3 years is 120 million. So the accounting would be exactly the same at the end of 2017 and at the end of 2018. So over the 3 years, a compensation expense of 120 a year would end up $360 million over the 3 years. But this problem, you need to know what to do if there is a forfeiture. Now remember, the executive is only eligible for the stock options if they stay the 3 years. What if they leave? Okay, if they leave, then they forfeit that opportunity. So let's read part 3. Unexpected turnover during 2017 caused the forfeiture of 5% of the stock options. So some of the executives left. Determine the adjusted compensation cost and prepare the appropriate journal entry on December 31st, 2017 and 2018. All right, so well, the first thing we have to do is come up with the adjusted compensation cost. So I'm going to dictate something to you that you should write down. The adjusted compensation cost would be equal to the 360 million times 95%. The adjusted compensation cost would be the 360 million times 95%, and that's going to be 342 million. So first step is to get the adjusted compensation cost, which is 342 million. Now, 342 million spread out over 3 years, So the next thing you would write down is 342 divided by 3 is 114 million. So the expense should be 114 million a year. Now, how much did they record already in the first year? 120. But now we know the appropriate number should have been 114. Well, we're not going to change the previous year, but we will take into consideration what happened in 2016 for the 120. So here we are at the end of the second year, and we know that the adjusted compensation cost is 342. So what should be the total compensation expense after 2 years if it's 114 a year? Well, 114 plus 114 is 228. So the appropriate compensation expense at the end of the second year would be 228. So if we look at the answer here to part 3, number 1, the compensation expense and paid in capital options, 108. How do we get to 108? Well, we know that the adjusted compensation cost was 342, and spread out over 3 years is 114 a year. So after 2 years, it should be 228. We already booked 108 in the previous year. I'm sorry, we already booked 120 in the previous year. So 228 less the 120 results in the proper compensation expense for the second year is 108. And then in the third year, we simply use the 114 million. So that's a good problem to review. And here, let's take a look at the way McGraw-Hill Connect solved the problem. Here, in step 1, they calculated the compensation cost exactly the same way we did. How do we measure compensation cost in stock option plans? We use not the fair value of the stock, but the fair value of the options. The fair value of the options was $6 per the option pricing model. We multiply that by the number of options. 60 times 6 is 360. Then in step 2, what would have been the compensation expense for the first year? Now, mind you, we didn't know that executives were going to leave until the second year. So we took the 360 and we divided by 3, and we came up with 120 million for that for 2016. Then the part 3 of the question was the part that dealt with the forfeiture. Now remember, if 5% is forfeited, that means your total compensation will be 95%, 100% less than 5%. So if we look at their calculation for 2017, the 360 was the original compensation. We multiply that by 95%. 360 times 95% would be the 342. Now mind you, 342 divided by 3 was what, 114,000 a year? Now, why did they multiply by 2/3? Well, that would have been the total compensation after the second year. So 360 times 95% times 2/3 would be the 228. Then they subtracted the compensation expense that was already recorded in 2016. 228 less 120. That's how they got the 108. Okay, let's go on to the next problem, which is earnings per share. Let's take a look at problem 1911, where we have non-convertible preferred stock, treasury shares, shares